I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, Marty Alvarado, a partner at Sova, where she works to drive large-scale change in higher education and workforce development through actionable strategies and equity-focused solutions. Marty brings over 2 decades of experience as a transformative leader in education. She previously served as the Executive Vice Chancellor for the Office of Equitable Student Learning Experience and Impact at the California Community College Chancellor's Office, where she led initiatives that reshaped the state's 116 campus community college system. Her leadership spanned critical areas such as guided pathways, competency-based education, and remedial education reform, all with an unwavering commitment to equity, access, and student success. During her tenure, Marty also navigated the system through the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, pivoting instruction and support services online while advocating for budget allocations and systemic reforms that prioritized underserved communities. At Sova, Marty continues her mission of empowering leaders and institutions to fulfill America's promise of equitable upward mobility through higher education. Her expertise and passion for lifelong learning makes her a sought-after speaker and advisor on equity, inclusion, and transformative education. Please join me in welcoming Marty Alvarado as she shares her insights with us today.
Thank you so much, Bethany. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. It is a joy to be with you all, genuinely, deeply a joy. I will share a quick story as I get started and say I've talked about our California work nationally with many of my partners at different organizations, and folks sort of look at me a little bit crazy, like, sure, sure, sure. And then I had a colleague from JFF who joined one of these SLO sessions, convenings, and was like, oh my gosh, the chat, the faculty, everyone was amazing. They're talking about all the things you're talking about. And I'm like, exactly. And I got a text message during the convening that said, I found your people. And I'm like, I'm not sure what that means, if it's a good or bad thing, but then learned it was amazing. So just really excited to be with you all today, and really excited about the work that is happening in California, because it is not happening anywhere that I've seen nationally. With that, I want to talk a little bit about education in the age of information today. I want to try on some new ideas that we are playing with, given that you all are at the forefront of education, I don't know, evolution, I'll say. I wanted to really request active feedback and engagement. So would love to hear your thoughts throughout this presentation, what's resonating, where are you disagreeing, right? Where are you like, nope, I'm not believing it. Would love your active engagement in the chat. It'll be great. It would be great, very helpful for us at Sova as we continue to evolve our work. So with that ask in mind, let me get started by sharing a story. And I'm going to start with this title slide, Practice Makes, and would love for you all to put in the chat, practice makes what? This is not a trick question. I think folks will have one of two answers. Would love to hear them. I was recently giving a talk in Oregon to a number of community college leaders, and we were talking about the evolution of higher ed and AI and all the things, and the new generation, right? What is the language of Gen Z? What is the slang of Gen Z, et cetera? I was right after lunch, so I needed to get them engaged and active, if you will, and I was in the room. And I have told this story about practice makes perfect, practice makes whatever, a number of times here in California and in other places. And so I assumed in this age of information that people have access to the information that I have access to, or that it is very common information, right? And so as I was standing there, I alluded very quickly to my typical story on practice makes perfect, and the murmurs in the room sort of had me pause, and the looks, and I said, time out, let me go back, let me pause. Have folks heard the expression, practice makes progress, right? My kindergartner was overjoyed, right, that she that her dad and I got it wrong at dinner when we said practice makes perfect. And I'm loving, 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 loving all of the comments in the chat. And they were floored, right? When she was like, practice makes progress, right? And because we're talking about what we need to unlearn, what we need to learn new, etc. They were so floored that I was invited back to meet with their or to present to their economic development, regional economic development group. And they were like, I asked, what would you like? I'm kind of a higher ed person. I dabble in workforce and economic development. And they said, well, if you just say practice makes progress instead of practice makes perfect, that would be a win right there, right? And I was floored at how uncommon or that folks didn't have access to this. And the reveal is that my daughter's now 18. So we are 13 years away from kindergarten, where we first learned this expression, right? So what this highlighted for me as I was thinking about this presentation, right, is in this age of information where there is a ton of information everywhere. Part of what we in higher education are wrestling with, right, is unlearning what we grew up with, perhaps. And this is just a simple example of it, right? If this idea of practice makes perfect needs to evolve into practice makes progress, part of that is because our information set is perpetually changing. Our job market is perpetually changing, right? The development of new content is perpetually changing. And so how do we really think about the paradigm shift within higher education as we have to absorb new information and integrate it into what we do in order to be effective at education? And what this made me, what we have been talking about relative to this concept is this idea of built for purpose, right? And I'm gonna apologize. There's a little bit of reading slides at you throughout this presentation, but only because I've gotten the feedback that just having the words on here isn't helpful when people want to access the slides after the presentation. So I've tried to add as much content as is palatable. But let me really focus in here for a minute on built for purpose. We all talk about this. We all know this. The question is, what is the action we have to take if given that we know this? But what I learned from that Oregon presentation, I can't assume that we all know this, right? I think we know this, but have we really wrestled with it and internalized it? And then have we been exposed to it, right? So for an industrial economy, right, which was really the foundation of our current higher education system, right? Our focus was really around uh, schools churning out workers for specific tasks in factories. And we've come a long way since then, but fundamentally, we are structured for this purpose. Rote memorization, efficiency, discipline, very focused and compartmentalized, right? You have an accounting department over here and a logistics program over there. Everything's sort of segmented, right? And I think the thing that really struck me as I was preparing these slides and as we've been talking about this is how much our education rhetoric is historically rooted in this industrial economy paradigm, right? We're going to teach people to show up on time because if they don't show up on time, right, the workforce is not going to tolerate that. And not yes, but no, but no, but yes, right? My favorite expression. And the main focus, right, the overall aim of this was to create a reliable workforce, right? With uniform, efficient production workers in all the different variations, right? Could be management, could be accounting, could be whatever. But that was the culture that we were trying to serve. As we move into not a knowledge economy or an information economy, right? The idea here, the focus here is that this is really about equipping learners with the ability to continually adapt to a rapidly changing environment, including the workforce, right? Critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, right? What an accountant, what your finance people on your campus need to know in order to be able to serve you effectively and create an environment where you and students are thriving as faculty members and administrators is much broader than just the accounting principles, right? So this idea of compartmentalized disciplines is really designed to serve the industrial economy, not our knowledge and information economy, right? And the idea here is that we have to have really well-rounded adaptive thinkers and individuals who can think critically, solve problems creatively, and thrive in a dynamic environment. For me, this was music to my ears. This is music to my ears as we continue to see surface in these conversations the tension between, are we just a machine for the workforce when we also have to, we feel our charge is to support the development of engaged, civically minded, right, citizens of our nation, right? So this tension has to come together in this knowledge and information age because it is one and the same at this point going forward. Okay, so the way this is showing up in the economy, right, and in the workforce is that the ways in which we have historically thought about the workforce need to evolve. And if we haven't been navigating the workforce recently, right, because we've been spending our time in the education sector, there is a question mark around what does it really look like to be a creator, right, and to be an influencer, to write prompts for generative AI and or to work on AI, et cetera. And so what you see on the screen here is just a sampling of the ways in which navigating careers is really about the overlap and the agency that individuals need to be able to have to navigate a wider set of options for their career trajectories. So we are often familiar and embrace the ladder or lattice when we're getting feisty and we're like, we're gonna shake things up and we talk about lattices. However, the idea of agency within your career is often reserved for those who have the most access and education and network. And yet individuals right out of high school have a lot more agency if they choose to lean into it, right? And so how are we supporting these other types of employment trajectories, career trajectories, roles, and combinations of roles? There is always the question of equitable compensation and stability and who has access to these pieces. So I never want to lose sight of the equity piece. But this is why I think that it's so critical that our education institutions are really thinking about how are we designed to support students' both awareness and knowledge of this employment trajectory, these employment trajectory changes, while also supporting their empowerment to navigate them in ways that maximize, right, their family and generational prosperity, right? So we're seeing a lot of different ways in which individuals are navigating the workforce. I want to come back to our educational framework and this concept of built for purpose, right? I'm going to be talking about that all throughout this presentation because as I think I probably alluded to, but didn't name specifically at the beginning, we are no longer built for the right purpose as a higher education system, right? So let me just say that out loud. We are no longer built for the right purpose. And we continue to tweak without really recognizing that I don't know, we are living in an igloo during a time of global warming, right? So we have to actually shift because it is melting around us. So the idea relative to workforce, right, is that our educational framework for the industrial economy was, again, really preparing individuals for these specific roles in the workforce. And we have been talking about this, at least on the workforce side, for at least a decade. I would say two. I know I don't look that old, but at least 2 decades that I've been around, we have been talking about the changing workforce and how individuals are going to navigate between 17 and 35 different jobs or careers or industry sectors. And yet we still are preparing individuals for specific roles in the workforce. All right. I would love to hear in the chat. Have folks heard this? People are going to have 17 different jobs over a lifetime. They're going to navigate multiple industry sectors. Throw it in the chat. Would love to hear. Am I assuming that people have that information and they don't? Would love to know. But what we are supposed to be or need to be preparing students for, what our purpose needs to be is preparing individuals to navigate complex, evolving landscapes, right? Because as generative AI comes online, occupations are going to change. Occupations are obsolete, new occupations. I am loving that. Thank you for those responding in the chat. We have been talking about this on the workforce side for multiple decades. It is happening all over. Employment trajectory is really the data we should be looking at and really thinking about how we're disrupting employment trajectory for the positive side, right? To improve employment trajectories. So there's less laterals and more upward momentum. But because we are focused on specific occupations or roles or disciplines, right, we are not really effectively preparing individuals to navigate a complex evolving landscape. And it may be 17 jobs and 4 to 5, thank you, 4 to 5 industries, but it's increasing. And what we haven't talked about is the gig economy, where people are navigating lots of different employment trajectories. And so our schema, right, what we think we are trying to do when we say students graduate really needs a hard look. I am not proposing hard solutions because we are all in this space of what does this look like as we continue to move forward, and how do we scaffold that evolution, but how do we do it much more quickly than we have been? So there is really this need to adapt our framework and our what we are built for. I want to introduce a term that I am currently in love with, and that I'm not sure what that says about me, but this is getting to the N of one. Right. I heard a presenter talk about this and really talk about it relative to our education competition, our private for-profit education competition. That what folks are really trying to figure out is how to get to an N of one in terms of the student experience. So think about your Netflix account, right? Or your Prime account, and how it is feeding you exactly what you want. You are able to navigate. It connects to your PayPal, whatever it might be. It is an experience that is custom to you, feels custom to you, and they are able to serve in mass in a way that is customized. I'm going to say that again. They're able to serve millions of people in a way that feels unique to every individual who is engaging in that platform, right? That's what I mean by an N of one. And right now, we struggle with that. We are not anywhere near that within higher education because we got to serve the masses, and we are thinking that we are serving the masses. I'm going to talk about scale in a minute, but I want to hold on to this concept of N of one. I was fascinated when I heard it, and it turned on some light bulbs for myself and for some of the folks in the room. Again, hopefully many folks have seen this, some version of this visual. This is an updated visual. Heather McGowan, amazing education futurist, her and her team, colleagues, have prepared this visual. And again, another one of my favorites. I love the evolution, and the way I want to talk about this, if you've heard me talk before, you've heard me talk about we need to become that learn box. It's now black, the black learn box, as opposed to the black educate box at top, where we're sort of cramming it all in the front end and sending people out into the workforce. Again, that's the industrial model, right? Where up on your left-hand side, right, you see the black educate box. And often we think our job right now, the trajectory is that we are cramming it all in, getting you all to be an expert, and then sending you off to work, and then you're out there, and then you retire, right? This curve, right, in that top left-hand side. I want to take you down to the bottom to the new emerging model. And what you see, right, we in community colleges know that that top left has been a fallacy all along, right? Many of our students are not coming to us right out of high school, right, at 18 years old. Many are, but that is the traditional, non-traditional is a myth, right? And what we're really seeing instead, and what we will continue to see more of, is what you see at the bottom emerging model, which is individuals navigating, right, education and workforce, workforce while they are enrolled in school, etc. And what you also see is that this is what is projected over a lifetime. Now, this is the norm that is both right now and projected to continue. And we are still constructed like that red educate box at the top left, not like that, or excuse me, the black educate, it used to be red, the black learn box at the bottom. What I love that they've introduced, because I think this matters for built for purpose conversations, right? Which is you'll see this dotted white line, right? This fluid line, that's an individual's trajectory, if you will. On the top right, the faulty logic model that we have embraced for decades, right? Is that we are going to educate those who come to us. We're going to send them out. And then 20 years later, whenever they need to reskill or upskill, they're going to come back to us and take this 3-month retraining. And then we're going to push them back out and never to see them again. Thank you. It's been real, right? Good luck, God bless. Right. That is, if we look at the emerging model, right, down below, the top model does not work for individuals who have to navigate this and actually are penalized if they're not participating in this, because you're losing opportunity costs, right? You're losing income, and you're losing networks, professional networks. You are not leveraging your professional networks to both enhance your learning and comprehension and skills and abilities, but also your opportunities for employment, your employment trajectory, right? Where you go next, right? And we have tried to solve this in higher ed because we still think our built for purpose are those top two models, right? We have tried to solve this by we'll create a few internships and we'll try to build business and industry partnerships as opposed to centering the student, right? Individual who is navigating that white dotted line, right? The thing that I want folks to take away from this is that we really have to shift our whole construct of what we think we're trying to do and what our role is as we are supporting individuals with scaffolding their knowledge, competency, and also being able to position them for economic prosperity within the workforce. I also want to note, as I get ready to transition to the next slide, that white dotted line looks different for everyone. You know this, right? But I think this goes back to the N of one. It is different for everyone. What I come with is different than what I experience while I'm with you. And it's happening right now. We just don't account for it. And this, I think, is part of the equity issue. We talk about this in the workforce side, that if I am a child of, if I'm a oldest child who has to watch siblings, because that is the expectation from my family, I don't build a resume in the ways that an individual who does not, a child who does not have that responsibility is able to get a part-time job or do different things in order to build a resume. And yet, the assets that I bring, the time management, the conflict resolution, all of the skills that I am having to develop, right, ad hoc on my own as a babysitter for my siblings, is not being transcripted, it's not being enhanced and augmented, and it's not getting credit on a resume when I am trying to enter the workforce. And so when we think about both equity and an assets-based approach to the individuals who show up at our institution or who we are aiming to serve, our old model really limits all that they bring to the conversation and to their learning experience, right? So I want to hold on to that as we continue to go forward. And as we think about this N of one, with hundreds and thousands and millions of white dotted line trajectories, including our own, right? How do we evolve in a way that it creates that unique experience or that perceived unique experience for individuals, but also accounts for all of the information, knowledge, experiences that they bring to the table as part of their learning trajectory? And I want to, I'm not going to say this as artfully as I wish I would. We're still playing with this language and trying to find the right words for it. But you all know, right, that learning, right, our ability to understand and comprehend is often accelerated by what we are able to connect it to, that intellectual schema that we are able to connect it to in order to scaffold our comprehension of complex concepts, right? We in education are not leveraging that as effectively as we could be, right? given that we try to compartmentalize and we're not making those interdisciplinary connections or those real life connections. And that sounds very generic, and I'm sure many of us do it better than others, but it is a challenge because it's not what we by default are designed to do. We don't see that as what we are designed to do, right? You have to memorize this theory and then demonstrate that you memorize the theory. And I'm really oversimplifying because I know we have amazing faculty on this, so bear with me here. But as a construct, faculty members are required to, right? I'll put that in, are required to do what I just described, right? It's not for lack of want or desire. It is, these are the expectations, these are the norms. This is our design within higher education. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving. And then if I'll hope my friends who are running this, please let me know if I am running long. I could talk about this forever and I apologize. And again, folks in the chat, what am I getting super wrong? What is resonating? What is a WTF, an OMG? Would love to hear it. So I want to take you on a journey of one of our ends or a couple of our ends, right? That white dotted line. So imagine this is the map of the skills, the universe of skills or competencies that people can accumulate for sake of discussion. We wrestled with this. I kept saying, you know, the little squares, and they're like, it's a honeycomb because you're filling all of it. So we're, again, still playing with this. Again, appreciate all the feedback, both critical and positive. What's resonating, what's not. And so we can imagine, again, just a quick primer, that these two that are filled in black, they're different skills. They're farther away from each other on this universe of skills map, and they're a little bit farther away. And then these, they're not so different. They're more adjacent, they're more complementary, they can build upon one another, and that's represented by being a little bit closer together for sake of discussion. So let's say in this, Jennifer is a mechanical engineer. Then this is Jennifer's skill profile, if you will, right? The black, the honeycombs filled in black really demonstrate mastery of the content or the skill, the competence, and the ones shaded in gray is where she's developing and where it's growing, right? Where her skill set is growing. And what I want you to pay attention to, I'm hoping you all can see my mouse, and I apologize if this gets confusing, throw it in the chat. I will slow down and come back and or not do this again. So pay attention to this bubble right here on the on your right hand side, right? The top three are black, the lower three in the middle, the lower two in the middle are gray, and this one's sort of clear. And this will help us keep an eye on the changes that I'm about to show you, okay? So let's say this is Claire, and Claire is a chemist. And what you'll note here is that there are some overlapping skills in this flower, honeycomb flower over here, where again, also some darkly shaded, the top three are darkly shaded, and some gray down here, again, very similar to what we saw with the mechanical engineer, again, for sake of discussion. And then we see all of these ones down here as shaded in black, mastery. You also see a few over here to account for some of the other things. Maybe she has a garden, right? And she's gardening, and that'll make sense in a minute. And so we have some other competencies over here that she has mastered. This might be an entry-level app developer. Again, lots of gray, a few mastered, but also you can tell here that the direction they can go, chemist or mechanical engineer, again, for sake of discussion, if they're, again, chemists and mechanical engineers, if we need to use different occupation examples, please let us know. But what you'll see is that how do we direct it? How do we advise, right? They could go in either direction, and they can continue to accumulate because their starting development competency really blends across too. We tend to think about this right now as courses. You've completed courses, right? Towards a degree. And this is not that. Right? These are not representing courses. These are representing the competencies and skills that individuals have mastered or have begun to develop. And that development trajectory can be very lengthy. And I think the important thing here is that people do not lose their skills and competencies. They take them with them to their next place, wherever that is, whether it's education or employment or relationships, parenting, whatever it might be. right? And so how do we honor, as an education institution, how do we build a purpose that honors and helps individuals aggregate all of the assets, learning, knowledge, awareness, all of it that they have been able to build? I want to pause here and note, folks would love to see in the chat or raise hands, how many folks are familiar with the Skills First movement? I see a few heads nodding, right? I see a few heads. Okay, so there is a huge movement that has been going on for, I don't know, at least 5 years. It's, they rinse and repeat and cycle through. But the Skills First movement is this movement to no longer require bachelor's degrees for jobs. Right here in California, our governor, a lot of different governments are issuing their edicts that they are no longer requiring degrees, bachelor's degrees, for particular occupations, right, or particular jobs. And this, I think we can say, well, it's not going to hit us, and yet individuals now have access, which means that their reliance on education to obtain access is diminishing. And this is also contributing to many of the factors, right, that are informing and or contributing to our enrollment decline, right, if you will. So I just want to name that the Skills First movement is really gaining momentum, particularly in this administration, but it's been going on for years, right? What we know from an equity perspective is that when we create parallel paths, those who have education and those who do not, the ones most vulnerable in the workforce when the economy tanks, right, when the recessions hit, are those who do not have the degrees, right, or do not have the education. So the vulnerability that we are placing students in, individuals in, right, when we go the skills first trajectory is something that is very top of mind for me. It may be wonderful. I don't have a crystal ball, but my magic 8 ball says no, it's not going to be good, right? But we'll see. So I want to emphasize that when we're talking about skills and competencies here, we are not talking about courses, right? This is not an equivalent to courses. Courses can be a vehicle for individuals filling in their honeycombs, right? But this is not the equivalent. This is about the individual acquisition and map of all the things that all the skills and competencies they are bringing to the table. Okay. So we saw the front-end developer emerging entry level. Here we see a very experienced, and it overlaps again with our chemist and mechanical engineer, and we see them shaded in black. But let's also then look at something a little bit outside of this, right? And so again, that farmer up in your left-hand corner is doing farming, has obtained mastery there, maybe went to an agriculture program, got a degree in agriculture, and is also an amateur private investigator, right? They're obsessed with Dateline, and they are online and looking at different pieces, and they've done some work in app development in order to understand how to navigate that, right? So you see this blending and different areas of shaded gray, shaded black. We're going to spend a little bit of time here on Tom. I'm going to say Tom is a chef, right, who spends every weekend tinkering with drones, right? Again, N of one. This is just a handful of individuals, and the variation, and this concept of people's interests, hobbies, etc., right? These could be, Tom could have learned all his chef work on Rachel Ray, if you're old enough to remember Rachel Ray, or whatever the cooking channels are these days, and had gone to school for drones, right? Or vice versa. So, and you'll see the different shades of gray and black, etc. But let's say Tom went to school. He went to one of our culinary programs and obtained a certificate or degree and is a professional chef and learned that in school. And all these others were learned elsewhere, right? And you'll see all the different, TikTok, YouTube, etc., right? All the different vehicles where acquisition of information and applied experiential learning on my own time through my own resources in my own space, perhaps, is happening, right? And from other folks, I love this, right? The guy at the hobby store, someone at the hobby store who goes by the nickname Pilot, right? It happens, right? And they're learning from those individuals. Where we land and why this matters for our education institution is that some are considered valid. Those culinary skills that are transcripted are considered valid or validated, right? They are externally validated. And those that are over there with the pilot are considered invalid or not externally validated, right? Because they are not transcripted. However, what I would point to is that they are validated in the I got my drone up and it operates, right? So there is a validation and an example of the proficiency of the work, right? And the skill set, but it is not transcripted or validated in the ways that we currently think about it. We might default here to, PLA, right? Prior learning assessments, right? We just need to have more prior learning assessments. Maybe, maybe. But also at the scale that we're talking about, we really need to think about how, if that's the direction we go, how that is accessible at scale, not necessarily related to courses, right? Because the course construct means that you have to hit all of those before you are able to receive a transcripted validated, right? Or transcripted validation. And what we're talking about here again is not related to courses, right? And then what we also have to think about is that this universe of skills is perpetually expanding. It is, it's possibly contracting, right? I use the example of Lotus 1-2-3. Again, if you remember Lotus 1-2-3, you're my people. That is no longer a skill set that is really relevant, right? However, it is transferable because I am somewhat proficient at Excel, right? Or Google Sheets. And for those who don't know, Lotus 1-2-3 was the precursor, right? If you will. So while Lotus 1-2-3 specifically may not be the required skill set, it is right. We as individuals take those skills and knowledge and abilities with us and can apply them in different concepts. Right. In the expansion, we can also think, right, writing AI prompts was not a skill that was required previously, right? It wouldn't have been on the honeycomb necessarily, at least for the majority of us. If you are a developer of AI, you may have been working on that for decades and you already have mastery. However, as a consultant, I might say that my ability to write discussion prompts, right, and engage individuals in conversations is a very transferable skill to writing AI prompts. It may not be, right? So what does that look like? How do we build on what we already know in order to continue to populate? This is why PLA is a necessary but insufficient response, because I may have applicable information, knowledge, skills that really just put me in the gray area. And then I need to build on that to make sure that I am getting into the black mastery, right, of the honeycomb. So they will expand, they will contract, they will change, but our individual competence is not what changes, right? It is the way this honeycomb gets constructed, if you will. And really, getting to an N of 1 requires acknowledging that the universe of skills, right, what we've been looking at is really just a zoom in, and it is very complex and comprehensive and large, right? And so we have to be thinking about what we do differently. Okay. I'm seeing in the chat, yes, whole person concept, right? Centering the learners means centering them and their experience and all that they bring to the table. And we continue to operate from our institutional confines, constraints, because that's what we were built for originally, right? We were built to do a job for the workforce as opposed to a job for the people who have to navigate a complex society. And again, I say this knowing that there is no easy answer, but I think there is an importance in being aware of what is the work that we have in front of us to do. So what I will also say is that getting to this N of 1, right? We really need to focus on personalized insights. In higher ed, we've looked at predictive analytics and big data, and we have to do both. We have to do that. And we have to start thinking about what does personalized data look like, and how are we using it to create this very customized experience for individuals, right? What's that integration, right? Because we need to understand who our person is holistically, right? And all of them effectively. Adaptability acknowledges individual variability and focuses on adapting methods to suit the individual's unique preferences or circumstances. What is the right content? We might think about it as courses. I would encourage us not to, but what is the right content to push to that oldest sibling who is watching children, right, during the day, right? What is going to help them actually build competence in particular areas related to the things they are already having to do, right? That is a customized experience, and I am getting just in time information that helps me change and or adapt, scaffold my understanding, competence, awareness, knowledge, right? Practical application, things like personalized learning paths. So think about Alex for those that that may be familiar with that math platform where it's, or even I think the SAT and whatnot, where it's changing the question based on how you responded, how you performed on the last question in order to make sure that you are getting reinforced support if you got the last question wrong, right? Or moving you forward. So it's very customized, right, in that personalized learning path. Recommendation systems, right? You like Downton Abbey, you might like Pride and Prejudice, right? Or whatever it might be. Think again, that Netflix kind of model. Although we have to think about what does that look like in higher education. And then customizable workflows, right? So, which I think that is where we default in this. We want the student success platform that allows us to automate scheduling. We haven't really asked the question, do we need all those appointments? Or is it because we are built for a different purpose that requires, again, compliance, right, et cetera? Question mark, right? And I say all of this lovingly. Okay, I'm going to keep moving because I don't want to run out of time and have a little bit more. There was something else I was going to say here that I am forgetting, but I'll remember later. Okay, so let's talk about building with purpose. Because I don't ever want to leave folks with just this feeling of despair, right? And or this is too big. There, what do we do? It's too big. It is too big. And also we have to just start putting one step in front of the other. And part of that is even just an awareness of what situation we're currently in. Oh, I remember what I was going to say for the last slide. I'm going to say it here. Yesterday, I am on TikTok. I love TikTok. It has helped me have a line of sight to different conversations and cultural moments that are happening amongst younger generations and different populations. So just the level of awareness and learning for me personally, my algorithm is algorithming, as they say. But what I saw yesterday, what I woke up and took a few, or last night, I took a few looks. There is a teacher, a faculty member, who posted videos for her class on African American Studies, right? Dr. Barlow, I want to say. And the number of individuals from all walks of life, from all age demographics, from all occupations showed up in the comments. She got 100,000 followers instantly of I'm taking this, like, oh, good, I'm enrolled in TikTok University, right? And so she had to shut down her account, like make it private because she's a real professor teaching a real class, and this was for her 30 students. But then you saw, I saw a dozen at least of other professors who were like, great, you are now enrolled in Finance 101, and we're going to talk about how to manage your finances and what the new tax laws mean and what a tariff is or whatever it might be. People are showing up saying, here is my content, here is my expertise. I'm an adjunct faculty member here. I'm a faculty member there. Here, let me teach you. And people are like, I'm now enrolled in comms and PR and finance and American studies. It is happening. It is happening. I'm like, oh, this is what we've been talking about. And it is happening. Is it real? Is it parody? Is it effective? Are they going to be able to document whether or not learning happened? Question mark. Are people going to learn? Yeah. Are they going to learn the like true information? Question mark, right? Or what people are being fed, is it validated? Question mark. Are we the heart, like, can we control that? No. right? So this is what we have to be wrestling with, because if we don't engage with it, it's going to happen whether we can control it or not. And how are we showing up in that is a big, big question for me. And what does this mean for faculty, right? Question mark. And our education workforce, right? As we really think about design for purpose. So just naming that. I know you can't download TikTok on the App Store, so if you aren't there, it's okay. But just it's why. And I just saw this morning that faculty member unprivated her account, invited everyone in, is giving reading lists, is talking about the quizzes, is sharing her knowledge, right, with individuals. She's also probably now part of the creator culture or creator um, program where she gets paid for followers and views. It is a different financing construct as well. Question mark, right? I don't know. I don't know exactly how that works, but and or whether or not you have to opt in or not, but it is a different vehicle for sharing information than what we have historically had constructed for us. So I feel like it's yes, I feel like all of the things. So just want to name that hot off the presses as of yesterday. So my first thought, well, none of this may seem optional. It is always voluntary to, participate. So I love this visual. All of my slides have links to the resources. I am borrowing a lot and trying to make sure I give credit. But yeah, we in education often feel like it's happening, but it's not really going to happen to us, or that's a thing out there, and we'll wait and see. And I feel like we are at a moment, right? We have been at a moment, right? There was also a young lady on TikTok yesterday who gave the analogy of movies. Characters in movies don't know what genre of movie they are in, right? And they don't know where they are in the movie. So when the individual goes downstairs to the basement to check a noise and you're like, why? They don't know they're in a horror movie, right? They think they're going downstairs to check a noise. You know that they're in a horror movie. And so you know what's coming because you know what the genre is and where you are in the movie, right? And I feel like that was such a beautiful analogy, which again, I learned so much, right, from others in terms of where are we at and what movie are we in, right? What movie are we in right now in higher education? And where are we at in that storyline? And we are not at the beginning. We are not at the beginning. ASU, all the privates, right? Online education, all of the things, right? We are not at the beginning. The eroding trust in higher education that has been growing, we are not at the beginning of our story. But we can wait. That is an option. For those who, again, have seen me talk before, I really make it a point to hit on reform versus transform. We have been focused in higher ed on the reform side, and we tinker as opposed to really transforming. I point to DevEd as the one big example that higher ed has advanced, which is when you are making changes to finances, job descriptions, full departments, et cetera. Think about your assessment centers that used to exist or perhaps really shifted. It is a thorough and dramatic change in the form, appearance, and character of. The title of this Built for Purpose slide, though, is From Scale to Trust, and I promised that we'd talk a little bit about scale. Once upon a time, the organization I was at, our teams hosted a convening and had a speaker who came and talked about a number of topics, but the thing that stuck with me the most is that I want to say it was 2017, 2018. He talked about how, and he was from, I want to say BlackRock, right? It was a very industry centric. What he said though was that the economy was shifting from a scale as a growth strategy to trust, right? To a values based growth strategy. And he said, we are moving from scale to trust. It is no longer scale. It is all about trust. And we have seen that in the ways in which consumers are becoming much more aware, boycotting and or supporting, depending on where the values align, right? That is an element of a values-based competency-based growth strategy, because then you see companies responding. We're going to hold our DEI, right? We're not abandoning, or we are, we're going to tone it down, whatever it might be, right? It is no longer about scale. And if we in education continue to think about the work we are doing as trying to get to scale, we are not getting to an N of one, right? We are trying to uniformly, efficiently offer what we have, maybe with some slight variation. We're going to do a little differentiation, but we're not getting to an N of one, and we are not focused on rebuilding trust and value propositions. Right. And I don't just mean value propositions in terms of ROI, but in terms of aligning with consumers' values, which is where the industry, where the economy was, and employers and industry were in 2018. This is again where I say, like, we are not at the beginning of our journey and the story here, right? We are much farther along. So really thinking about what does transformation look like in an age where trust is the scale vehicle, right? Is the growth vehicle. I am a huge fan of agile learning. As I learn more, I may learn to not love this, but again, we are growing and learning. You all know much more about this than I do. But really thinking about how are we integrating agile learning into our practices? How is it showing up in our campus policies, in our department policies and practices? Really focused on equipping learners with the skills to adapt to a rapidly changing environment. How is that showing up in your curriculum, in your courses, in your conversations around professional development, et cetera? It emphasizes adaptability, collaboration, and rapid iteration. How is it showing up in your daily lesson plans, your course experiences, activities, et cetera? And the structure is really about short learning cycles with frequent feedback loops. Again, you all are probably really familiar with this, but this is, does it matter what topic when I have access to all the topics at my fingertips on my phone, right? Or is it more important that I can, or is it equally important that I can actually integrate new information and discern, like check sources, right? And discern, is this information valid? Where is it coming from? What are the two sides of this argument? Can I engage in this in order to integrate this information effectively, right? And then I also want to acknowledge the time we are in, how easy it is for us to feel very uncertain. On multiple levels, right? The economy, the government, the different wars, all of the, and also our own courses, our declining enrollment, perhaps, our state budget, right? Things even more closer to home. And so I'm hoping many of you are familiar with this term VUCA, but if not, I wanted to introduce it because I feel like if we have language, we can talk about it and talk through it and move to the other side. But if we don't have language for it, it continues to swirl for us. For those who may not be aware, VUCA typically stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, that top row. And we often will hear, like, we're living in a time of VUCA, right? Ooh, chaos, fear, all of the things, right? Because it is about it being disrupted, rapid changes, uncertainty, we don't know what's coming, a lot of ambiguity, a lot of we don't know, and so we're waiting. Many folks, all across my TikTok page, because that's the side that I'm on, are K-12 teachers talking about potential ICE raids and different things. And so there is a lot of fear and ambiguity because they don't know what's going to happen, right? But so how do we individually, collectively, really begin to think about and lean into things like that bottom row and really shift VUCA to a place where we can be proactive and sort of stabilize what is a very volatile environment at the moment. Wildfires, right? Again, it's not just the government, it is across the board, all the things that are happening. So vision and unrelenting focus or purpose. So even if most of us don't have control of our institutions, but within your departments, within your course, for your students, right? All of these pieces, how are we really leaning into these elements? Understanding, clarity, and agility. And this last one, the A, is really what I would like to focus on as we wrap up this conversation, because the being flexible is core to being able to manage the rest of this. I want to leave you with this concept of the transformation coin. And this, again, all of this content has been generated by multiple conversations with different leaders and amazing practitioners. And in that, one of the questions that surfaced in those conversations, one of the questions that surfaced was this question of ambiguity. How do you hire individuals? Like, how do you know if individuals can navigate ambiguity? How do we identify those who have this skill set? And we were sort of talking through this, and what surfaced was this two-sided coin, the transformation coin, if you will. On one side is ambiguity and all the unknowns, and on the other side is creation. The way that individuals show up and navigate ambiguity is by creating. And there are two ways in which this can play out, probably many more, but two for this conversation. And in that first line of definition description, what you see is ambiguity really centered as uncertainty. And underneath that is the fear, the anxiety, sort of the tone of it is that the worry, right? We don't know. And so then the creation side becomes about creating order, right? Clarity, order, expression. So think about the ways in which some institutions or systems or even individuals have approached AI. I don't know. It's unfamiliar. I worry that it's going to do bad things, right? Whatever those bad things are. And so I am trying to confine, constrain, control, and provide clarity about where it is acceptable and where it is not. We gotta set boundaries around this, right? And sort of guardrails, right? However, if we look at that second line, it's really positioning ambiguity as fostering exploration, right? It is unknown. It's not uncertain, it is unknown. So we have to be curious. We have to explore. We have to seek to understand and learn. We have to enter a learner's mindset here. And the creation focus then becomes needing to navigate it, not needing to control it, but needing to we need to navigate AI as an example. We don't need to control it. We need to navigate it, and we need to be able to do that in a way that helps find solutions and expresses options and opportunities in open-ended ways. And so really thinking about ambiguity and the time that we are in, not as the sky is falling, right, perhaps, but much more as an opportunity for us to unlearn and learn anew. And I think central to this effort is going to be assessing learning. How do we know if learning happened? Because that really is our purpose at this time, right? Going forward in a knowledge economy, our purpose is understanding and supporting and transcripting, validating learning, right? All of the things. So I will leave you with this quote. I love a quote for those who know me. You won't know the path until you're on it. And unfortunately or fortunately, whether we wanted to be here or not, we are on it. So thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I think I might have used all of my time, so I apologize if I no longer have time for questions.
Bring my camera back. That is perfectly fine. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Yarek, how are we doing on time? Do we want to do a few questions or?
I think we were going to maybe give people a 5-minute quick potty bio break.
Yeah, that works too. So thank you so much, Marty. Should we maybe come back at 10 even?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Take a few minutes. I'm sure a few of us will hang out here if you want to hang out as well and continue engaging in the chat. Otherwise, get up, stretch, refill your coffee cup, and we'll see you in a little bit.
So Marty, this is just very fiery speech. You don't know, but we've been texting each other as we were talking. This is just absolutely fantastic. We've been talking about this, and I think if I were to reflect on your presentation, you are putting those visuals and putting the concepts, the descriptors that you're using in such clear and illustrative way at the same time, so succinctly. I just I'm speechless. I mean, I just can't find ways to describe it. I mean, I had more questions that I could even. I mean, it was just my brain, I guess, didn't compute as fast as you were speaking. It's just truly amazing, starting with the student agency and then AI and the importance of skills. And when you touched upon this TikTok, I put it in the chat room. You think about it, that okay, fine. So when we have trust and we have the skill on the part of faculty, world is not the limit anymore. I mean, this is like, we can do anything. We really can. And I'm just thinking, okay, what about international borders? What about our funding formula? What about tuition? What about, all these things that fill out our days, and we get paid to understand, to figure out, okay, things that are being, let's just say, snatched from under our feet as we try to linger. And it's I'm just absolutely stunned. So I'm just looking forward to working with you more on these topics, and we hope to have you. I suppose each one of those slides could be, a Friday SLO talk. It's just a conversation that can probably engage a lot of people at so many different levels. You're absolutely right. We, as instructors, as faculty leaders, our systems, when we think of courses, we put everything in our pigeonholes, thinking that this is the best way we can do. We never talk about history of psychology, or geography of psychology, or chemistry of psychology, right? And then you think of I don't know, math. Why can't we talk about English language arts and math at the same time in the same sentence? We just can't. And again, if we can't, well, students are doing it for us. And again, the examples that you brought up, just such fantastic illustrations. I'm just, besides myself. So thank you so much. I'll just leave it at that, because again, my brain is just spinning around all those thoughts. So thank you. I just cannot thank you enough. I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much. This is really, all the feedback is super helpful. Critical feedback, so it gets clearer, is also really helpful in the chat. Thank you. Thank you. I do want to say, I am a practitioner at heart. So rolling up my sleeves and getting into the work is a joy. And I know how hard this really is for all of us in terms of implementation. And so Sova, and with our network of national partners, funders, whomever it might be, we would love to be in community with you doing this work and setting the, introducing what's possible, right, for public higher education. So thank you so much, everyone.
That's right. We'll be here. Thank you again.
If I can just add, it's also very comforting to hear your perspectives and know that that's the brain that was helping shape so much of what happens in our system. So it's very, sometimes we're so far removed from the chancellor's office and what, has happened and future plan. And so it's just, it's heartening to hear, like, oh, these are some of the thought process that we're going in. Like, that's encouraging to hear it firsthand from someone who is in the mix of it. So thank you for that. Thank you for what you've done for our system.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you all. Appreciate everyone's super hard work, and appreciate you being here on a Saturday. So thank you so much.
You too.